All right, so we're going to go over the piano roll editor. Um, this is where all the fun happens. This is the Recife drum machine. I'm going to switch over to the Wolfsburg Synth so that you can see they do look very similar. Obviously, the whole top half, the piano roll editor itself, looks almost the same. They do have different options, and we're going to go over them separately. But first, we're going to go over the Recife, and we'll discuss the functionality here. So first of all, before we get started, I want to show you one thing. You can see on a phone, the devices are pretty small. They can be kind of hard to read. If there's something in particular that you can't see that well, or you just want more control over it, if you turn your phone, it will switch to landscape mode, and as you can see, it makes it larger. If I use the up and down arrows up in the top right, you can minimize or maximize your device, and then you get a bigger view of the piano roll editor. So you can see how that would be helpful in certain situations. All right, so looking at the drum machine here, we'll start at the top left of the device itself. You can see it's got kit program. If you tap that, you can choose the available drum kits. You can also make your own kits, and you see you switch to user here. I don't have any, but you can make them. You can import and export them as well and save as, all that. I'm just going to pick one at random, like techno. They have a lot of sounds. We'll get to that. So you can hit the pads with your thumb or play them on your keyboard, which I just did. We'll go over the bottom half of the screen in a second. To the right of the kit program, you've got your master effects. This is a send effect. Some of the sounds have a reverb applied, but you can switch it to other effects. And this is what I was talking about before. They do have all these effects available for most of the devices when you're actually in the device. And I wish they had some of these available for the insert effects, because as you can see, they have two different kinds of delay here. They have things that aren't even available out there, like grain shift and slicer, tremolo. And then there's like 3 different types of distortion here, ring modulation, different filtering options. So it would just be lovely if they had it out on the insert effects, but you can still get a lot done, don't get me wrong. When you have something selected, when you mess with these 2 edit knobs, they tell you as you're moving them what they're for, what parameter they're actually changing. The left one on this is the time for the reverb, and the other one is the level of the reverb. And then at the top right, your master volume is there. But to stay on the send thing, the way that you actually use the send in this screen for the drum machine is whenever you hit a pad, that is what you are then editing in the bottom right section of the device. So you can see when I hit that, the waveform changes to be the C-hat Techno 2, or if I hit it again, a different pad, it shows it's the C-hat Techno, or the open hat Techno 2, sorry. And if you look in the bottom right, you'll see the FX send button is lit up. Well, that means it's being sent to the reverb sound, but here's a sound that doesn't have it, and you can see there's no reverb applied, but all I have to do is turn it on, and now I have reverb. So, if you click the waveform, by the way, you get the available sounds, and there are quite a few. They're segmented off by what type of drum sound they are. So there's quite a few. It's very nice. Just underneath the waveform there, you've got your start point, which is where the where the beat starts, basically, where your sound starts. The length chooses how long it is, as you would imagine. The decay sets a decay envelope, so you could change the length and then choose how long it takes to decay. The speed is tied to the repeat button here, so when you hit a pad, it plays it at various intervals, like 1/16 or 1/32, 1/8 triplets. So that's a nice little feature sometimes to use. Starting back at the left, you've got your pitch, does what you would expect. You've got your pan, which does what you would expect, and then your level, which is the overall level for that particular sound. Then you've got your one-shot mode button, you've got your reverse, and you've got your A-B group, which I don't really use, but you can if you want. I'm not going to really talk about it. So that's essentially how the drum machine works. Other devices have other options. Every device is unique, but the more you use them, the more you get used to them. They all work similarly in some ways. So let's look at the piano roll at the top. You can also, on the left side of the piano roll, you see it has the names of the sounds. If you can scroll up and down, if you tap the name of a sound, you can see that it actually plays it. So that's nice. You see it defaults to 1 bar. In the top right of the piano roll editor, you see the little plus in a circle. If you hit that, you can add a bar. And you'll see that bar 1 is yellow. That means that's what's being viewed currently, but you can switch to bar 2 or bar 3 or bar 4, whatever. We will get into this more, but if you hit function, you get a lot of options here. You can choose your bar length there as well. So I'm going to switch this to 2. Now I've got 2 bars. Or I can switch it to 8. Now I've got 8. So that's a nice quick way to do it. In here you can choose your play mode, loop, or one shot. You can mute, as we discussed, and you can choose your grid, which is more relevant when you're in this screen. You can see it's set to 1/16, which is why the grid looks like it does, but if I were to change it to 1/64, you can now see out here that this is super small. I'm going to change it back to 1/16. You can also do triplets, which will give you access to triplet beats on the grid. And I'm going to use this right now. You see I have 3 notes sitting there. Clear note right here clears the notes. It clears all notes on all bars. So be careful. Clear automation clears any recorded automations. We'll go over recording automations in a bit. And then copy. I'll give you a little example of how this works. Let's say we have a beat here. And I've got it on bar 1, but it's not on, actually I'm on bar 2. Whoops. Same thing applies. I have it on bar 2, but it's not on bar 1. So I'm going to go function, copy. You choose your source, which is bar 2, destination, bar 1. Now if I go to bar 1, I've got the same thing there. So it's really nice to be able to copy and paste like that. We'll go over the undo button later. There's some things to note about the undo button, so we'll go over that in a little bit. In the bottom of the piano roll window, you'll see velocity. If we had some beats here, so if you have some beats here, you can see the velocity envelope. If you tap that, it gets bigger. And then you can see along the left side all of your settings for all the knobs down here, depending on the sound you're on. This is true for all devices, by the way. When you go into the envelope editor here, you can choose whatever, and you can use your finger to actually adjust the envelope. Now you can see it's a little tricky with your fingers on a phone. It's probably a lot easier on an iPad, but you can also pair a Midi device, and you can assign your Midi device to the particular setting, and you could adjust it in a more fine way using that method. To get back to your regular piano roll, you just go up to that little sliver that's visible at the top of the screen and just tap it, and it brings you right back. So one thing to note, at the bottom you see the Quantize is lit. You can turn it on or off, obviously. That has to do with live recording, but it also applies when you're drawing notes. Before I was trying to draw some notes in and it wasn't lining up properly and I was confused, but I realized that it was because the quantize was turned off. So you'll see if I try to tap here now, it's not right on it, but if I turn quantize on, it gets right in the little, it snaps to basically. So if you want quantize turned on, be aware of that. Up at the top of the screen, you can actually navigate between devices on the same scene. There's nothing to the left of the Recife, so I can only go right. But once I go to track 2, now I can go left or right because I can go back to the Recife or I can go forward to the Zurich. Which leads us into discussing the synth screen, which is very similar. I mean, obviously the piano roll is almost identical except for now you have an actual piano along the left side. And you can, just like with the sounds in the drum machine, you can press them and it plays the note. Obviously at the bottom of the screen you also have an on-screen keyboard. This is nice if you don't have a Bluetooth or Midi keyboard that you can pair. You can make tracks pretty much anywhere, in the doctor's office, you know, at a funeral, maybe not there, but you know what I mean. To the left of the keyboard you've got a scale button. If you tap that you get a bunch of options. You can have it play chords instead of single notes. There's an arpeggiator with all your normal arpeggiation options, so that's really great because basically any instrument in Gadget that has a keyboard can be arpeggiated. On the left side of the screen you've got your scale types, so you can actually choose from all these scales. So I'm going to choose Raga 1 here, and when you play your notes on the on-screen keyboard it will only play in that scale, so you basically can't hit a wrong note. So that's pretty good. And just something to be aware of with that is if you are using a paired keyboard, that function does not apply to the keyboard you're playing externally. You can choose your key, and then the 3 right options, octave position, octave range, and step, those all apply to the on-screen keyboard. So if I did a bigger octave range, for instance, I get more notes. So you get the gist. That's the scale button. Now, the devices all differ, but you can see on the Wolfsburg here, up at the top, I mean, here's where you choose your sounds in the middle there. There are some factory ones and there's factory 2. You can also save your own presets. To the right of that, though, you see there's OSC, filter, and mod. These are the different pages of the synth. So this is the oscillator page. You can hit filter to go to the filter page and mod to go to the modulator page, the modulation page. Under filter here, you can see in the bottom left that there are 2 effects. So the drum machine you saw had one send effect, but this device happens to have 2 separate effects. So you got your ensemble, and you can change it to any of these other ones, and then the BPM delay. I'm going to change this to, let's say, chorus flange, and it's turned way up, so I'm going to turn that down a little. In fact, I might choose a different sound, like this chill wave pad's kind of good. And see, it's got a talking modulator. That's what gives it that interesting sound. I'm going to change the hall reverb to grain shift, for instance. You can see it applies kind of a weird effect to it, kind of a glitchy effect. I'm going to turn the cutoff filter down, resonance up a bit. So that's kind of an interesting sound. I'll use that to record something in a moment. Let's up the bars here to 4. That's essentially how the synth differs from the drum machine. They're very similar, just some devices have slightly different settings.